Hey Dana, it's Julia, the ex-English major, and today I am going to go check out a new library, which means that it is another roll and review. That is the series on my channel where I go ahead and roll 3 dice to pick a title for me. So I have my handy dandy title sheet here, and essentially what's going to happen is I'm going to roll a d6 to get an author's last name, letters of the alphabet that the last name has to start with. I'm going to roll a d8 to determine a color that needs to be prominent on the book there. And then I'm going to roll a d20 to find some sort of element on the cover. Then when I go to the library, I need to find something that has all 3 if possible, but if I can't find something with all 3, then I'm going to have to find at least 2. Really excited for this one today because we are going to a new library later this afternoon. I'm going to go and get beers and pizza on a patio with my family, so my sister, my parents, and then my husband's mother and his stepdad. And so we're all just going to hang out. So really excited. And nearby there's a new library that we haven't been to, so I'm going to go and swing by there on our way. So let me go ahead and get into what I'm going to be rolling for, and then we will go ahead and pop on over to the library. Shout out to use your public libraries. If you do have a library near you and you don't have a library card, would highly recommend you go ahead and do that. There is more than just books that can be found at the library. And even just getting a library card without checking books out is a huge help to our public libraries, but they do a ton of other things as well. So I am a big proponent of going to the library, utilizing not only their books and their resources, but they have classes. A lot of libraries you can rent out physical materials as well. So highly recommend. I will stop rambling here. First, let me go ahead and have my D6 to roll for an author's last name. 3. So my author has to have a last name that begins with I through L. Next, I will take my D8 to find a color that needs to be pretty prominent on the cover or the spine. 5, which means yellow. So I need to have yellow on the cover or the spine. And then last is my D20 for something that needs to be on the cover when I'm searching. 5, which is a flower. So I need to go ahead and find an author or a book that has an author's last name that begins I through L. It needs to have yellow either on the spine or the cover fairly prominently that needs to stand out to me. And then it needs to have a flower or some sort of floral on the cover. I will hopefully find something with all 3. If not, then I will nix one of those criteria and find something with just 2. And I will check back in with you when I have found my book. We'll see if I ended up finding something with all 3. I am back from the library here and the rest of my day. I ended up actually picking out 3 books from the library. So 2 others that I'm going to be reading and will probably end up in some sort of reading wrap up here is Beasts of a Little Land and A Market of Dreams and Destiny. But for this roll and review, the book that I picked up to match the criteria here is The Skeleton Key by Erin Kelly. So this is a book I have never heard of, so I'm going to go ahead and read the inside cover here for what it's about, and then I will go ahead and start reading it and come on back with my thoughts and opinions. In a large house in London, 2 families meet. One person among them is excited about the revelation he is about to make. The others dread what will happen next. The Golden Bones by Frank Churcher was published 50 years ago as a simple fairy tale and treasure map. But it soon grew into a dangerous obsession for many, bringing despair, danger, and even death to those associated with it. All the while, a single piece of the puzzle remained unaccounted for. Now, Sir Frank wants one last publicity burst, then to put the whole thing to rest. His family are violently against the idea. None of them want the scrutiny it will bring. And as buried secrets rise to the surface, crimes of the past and present are revealed. Really excited to kind of go out in here and read The Skeleton Key, and I will come on back here with my thoughts once I've read it. All right, I have finished The Skeleton Key by Erin Kelly. Overall, I really enjoyed this book. It was long, but I really, really liked it. It is a twist on both a thriller as well as kind of a family drama. So you kind of have both if you are interested in kind of fast-paced action and a family drama kind of slower element to it. You've got both. So it has little pieces that I think a lot of people could really be into. That being said, there are a couple things that I could point to as pieces that I think could be off-putting for some readers, or that I personally could point to as flaws. On the whole, overall, I really liked this book, and this is one that I thoroughly enjoyed. So I was really, really happy that I ended up rolling and picking this one from the library, because I probably wouldn't have picked it up otherwise, and I had a really good time with it overall. So I'm going to go ahead and get into a spoiler section. I will put a timestamp up here on the screen so that way you can skip to the time if you are interested in going into this without any spoilers. My spoiler section will not include everything since it is a thriller, but it will go more in depth than just the brief summary that I read on the inside jacket. So fair warning with that. This is your warning to skip ahead. Getting into some light spoilers here. Again, it's mostly going to be just kind of an overall summary of the book as opposed to a true in-depth spoiler. Since it is a thriller, there are a lot of twists and turns, and I'm not going to get into all of them here, but just a little bit more in depth about what the book is about if you are still on the fence, if this is something that you would be interested in reading. We are following this family, or I guess there are two families that are kind of linked together both by friendship and by marriage. This wealthy family in London, and so they live essentially in kind of a duplex. They share one big house that's kind of been split in two. And so we've got the Churchers and we've got the Lallies. Frank Churcher and Lal, that's his nickname, Lally, are two best friends and neighbors. And so Frank Churcher is this engineer. He's really, really interested in anatomy. And then Lal is this illustrator. He's an artist. Frank and Lal are, like we said, they're best friends, and they each have their own respective wives. So Frank is married to a woman named Cora, who's a little bit older than him, and she is a model. She sits for life portraits. She sits for artists. She's kind of this bohemian older woman, beautiful, beautiful person. And then Lal is married to a nurse, and she is seen as more handsome than necessarily beautiful, but both of them are kind of striking in their own way. And Frank and Lal have a bit of this friendship that also has an edge of antagonism. And what kind of fuels this even more is Frank, like we said, he's an engineer. He's also really interested in anatomy, and he becomes famous for creating a children's book that is kind of throws him into this art world. He already has been a part of it a little bit with Lal and with his wife Cora. Both of them are very bohemian, very much artists, but this children's book is what really kind of forces the Churchers into the limelight. And so this children's book is based on a song that Cora was singing one night when Lal, Frank, and Cora were all drinking. This song is kind of this old medieval song about this woman named Eleanor who is in love with this man named Tam, and she dies, and Tam, in his grief, goes and scatters her bones, and one day he'll bring the bones back together and she will come back to him, is kind of this old medieval tale. Frank takes this and turns it into this children's story that is complete with these images, and it's of these like golden bones for Eleanor. And not only is it just a children's story, but the book itself is a treasure map, and Frank has made these little golden replicas of Eleanor's skeleton and has hidden them around England. And so this kind of book becomes this big overnight sensation as these people, they're called bone hunters, they're these super fans, go across and start finding these golden bones, these small little golden bones, to put Eleanor back together. This fame is something that Frank is really, really interested in. However, tragedy strikes, and one of the bone hunters dies in one of the attempts, and so Frank starts to call off the search. It's this big kind of publicity piece, and there's one fragment left. It's Eleanor's pelvis that is still remains unfound. Some of these fanatics, even though Frank has called off the search, some of these fanatics have kept on going, and his daughter, who Frank and Cora's daughter, who they named Eleanor, gets caught in the crossfire, and some of these crazy superfans have stalked her. They have almost killed her while they were trying to essentially take her pelvis, because they were saying that the golden bone is actually within Eleanor. And so Eleanor, the eldest daughter of Frank and Cora, has been absolutely traumatized by this book. And while the rest of the Churchers and even some of the Lallies see this book and this fame in a positive light, Eleanor absolutely does not. And so the thriller aspect of the story is we are following Eleanor as it is the 50th anniversary of the children's story, and there is kind of this new buzz, and what Frank Churcher's son Dominic has done is his son Dominic has created an app that will allow for the 50th anniversary. It will be this virtual treasure app that will create buzz around this 50th anniversary and will allow people to go ahead and try to find more of these bones virtually. Again, kind of drum up this publicity. And so now that there is this 50th anniversary looming, we have some of these bone hunter crazed superfans who are sort of stalking her again. And Eleanor is worried not only about her safety, but the safety of her sort of adopted daughter. She isn't really adopted by her. She is the biological daughter of one of Eleanor's, who she goes by Nell because of the craziness around the book, one of Nell's ex-boyfriends. It's his biological daughter, but he has kind of been on these benders. And so she really takes care of Billy, and she sees Billy as her daughter, and she will do anything in her power to not only keep herself safe, but keep Billy safe, as all these people in Billy's life have let her down. And kind of on the backs of that, so that is the kind of the thriller element of the story, is following Nell as there's this resurgence of these bone hunters and this kind of crazy fanaticism around this story. But what we also have is kind of this slow-paced, intimate family drama as we are looking back in the past with kind of Frank and Lal's butting heads and the kind of creative animosity, how one of them does really, really well and the other one's down on their times, and then kind of the shift in power dynamics as the other one starts to kind of rise in popularity, and Frank becomes a little bit of a has-been, and he tries anything he can to get back in the public eye, including releasing this big art gallery known as Intimacies, where he has gone and painted all of the various women that he has had an affair with. And so we are watching these two men as they're old now, and their past, they're kind of this twisted family history there as well. Dominic, so Frank and Cora's son, has married and had children with Rose, who is the daughter of Lal and his wife Bridget, his nurse wife Bridget. They have a daughter named Rose, and Rose and Dominic end up getting married. They have 4 children. And so not only are these families physically so near, but now they are related by blood. And so it is kind of this intimate family drama, as well as you uncover some long hidden family secrets on top of the resurgence of this kind of the bone hunters. And this especially starts to come to a head when they're filming this documentary for what will be the 50th anniversary release of both the story and the app, and there's film crews there to kind of uncover the drama and what is supposed to be the unearthing of that final small piece, that final small pelvis, when Frank Churcher sends his grandson up into the tree to go ahead and uncover what is supposed to be this golden bone, this golden pelvis. What his grandson finds instead is an actual human pelvis that is of a murder victim. And so we are kind of following this family drama with who murdered this person, who is this person, and what happened to the actual small golden jewel, and as well as kind of the intricate family dramas there. So that is, again, kind of overview. I haven't gone into all of the twists and turns. There are a lot of big reveals that I really want to not discuss because that's something you should go into blind. So, things that I think the Skeleton Key does extremely well is I thought the pacing was really good. It has quite a bit of twists and turns. It will keep you on the edge of your seat. So I thought that that was very interesting. It also plays around with who you are following at the time. And so there's this large cast of characters with this kind of intricate family drama, and you feel like you get to know most of the adult characters. You don't really get to know some of the children very well, but the adult characters, they all have different pieces going on in their lives. They all have different struggles, and they kind of have this polished veneer on the surface, but then when you go deeper into them and their intricate personal lives, they all have their own struggles. They all have their own mess, and I feel like that is balanced really, really well. Another piece that I thought was really interesting is while you're also getting this in-depth look at all the characters, you are also getting an in-depth look at various points in time. The book jumps around in time quite a bit, and I thought it was also very easy to follow, even though sometimes you have one chapter in the past and sometimes you have 5 or 6 chapters in the past. I thought it was very clear and easy to see, or easy to picture where you are in time, which some stories that deal with kind of incongruent narratives and kind of a twisted timeline where you're going back and forth in time, I think that it's very clear where you are in time. And so that's one thing that Erin Kelly does really well. As well, on a pure writing standpoint, I thought it was really engaging. I thought that there were just enough descriptions to where I could picture things pretty clearly, but she didn't get overly bogged down in the descriptions, which is really good because this book is extremely long and it is extremely complex. And that is one of the things that I think kind of it works against this book's favor as well. So kind of it's jumping into one of the weaknesses here, but one of the weaknesses in this story is I feel like it was 2 separate books squished into one. And so that is something that can be helpful, but can also alienate some readers, especially those who are interested in just one thing. So from the Dusk Jacket, the summary, the small summary that I read yesterday and earlier in the video, it labels this book as what seems to be more of a fast-paced thriller, and there is that element to it, but it also has kind of these slower parts where you are learning more about the family drama and kind of the juicy family history there. And so I think that that is something that if you are interested in both those elements, if you are somebody who likes to read fast-paced thrillers, kind of murder mystery, and you are also interested in slow simmering family dramas, then that's something that could be a strength. But I think that where it falls into a weakness is it feels like it's 2 books spliced into one. And that is something that if you're only interested in one or the other, then it might alienate some readers. The readers who are only interested in the fast-paced thriller action that this is described as might kind of have their eyes glaze over in some of these kind of in-depth, slow past chapters, and vice versa. Some people who are more interested in intimate family, slow-paced dramas might not be as interested in some of these fast-paced. It's got both. And so if you're not a reader who's interested in both, I could see how parts of this you would just be kind of flipping through to get to the parts that you were interested in. And so that is something that could be a pitfall for this book. I also think that, again, I enjoyed this book, but this book was really long. And so I think that Erin Kelly could have benefited from picking one or picking the other and not trying to make it so much of a thriller, or if you're going to make it a thriller, kind of stay in the thriller lane and maybe cut some of these family drama pieces. Or if you're interested in writing a slow family drama, maybe the author could have cut some of the fast-paced murder mystery puzzle aspects of it and just focused on the family. Another piece that I think was a bit of a letdown is there were a lot of really interesting, to me, plot points that were brought up and then immediately kind of discarded and nothing else was done with that. So a perfect example of this, again, this is going to be a little bit of a spoiler, so I'm going to raise my hand here if you're watching the video, and I'll just put a timestamp as well for when you can skip this piece. But we have Billy is this adopted daughter, and she has known nothing but poverty. She has known a lot of important people in her life letting her down. And in one piece in the book, she has kind of a meltdown and she yells at Nell saying, "You play at poverty, but you don't know what it's like to never be welcomed back to your family. And you're the one who's rejecting your family. Your family's not rejecting you. And at any moment you could go back to your wealth and your riches. And so it feels like you're play acting at being poor, and you're play acting at having this poor foster daughter, because it makes you feel good and it makes you seem like you're a benevolent person. But then at any point you could go back to your family and you could go back to having money. And so why are you pretending that you're poor, and why are you pretending to be a good person just for when it's convenient for you, when this is my life and you are messing with my life, and you put on poverty and you can take it off whenever you want, and you put on being the black sheep of the family, but your family is waiting for you and they love you. And so it's really insulting to me to see you act this way, and because it makes you feel good and helps you sleep at night, when this is my life and it's really not fair for you to put on my life as a costume. And she gets into this point, and I think that she's making very interesting points, very good points. And then they never do anything else with that in the story. And for me, I feel like that was kind of a letdown. There were a lot of really interesting pieces about poverty and about what it is to be part of this wealthy family and reject it, and how people with wealth will kind of give just enough money to charity to feel good about themselves, or will pretend to know what it's like, but then when faced with the realities and the hardships of poverty, they can always go back. And I think that was a very interesting piece, and Erin, the author, put it out there and then dropped it and never did anything with it again. And so for me, that is just a bit of a letdown. There were multiple pieces like that where a important tidbit was brought up and it was a very compelling, interesting piece. And then it was brought up once in conversation, never addressed again. And so for me, it was a little bit of a letdown, where there was a lot of really interesting nuggets that could have been explored further, and then they were seemingly abandoned. Again, on the whole, I really enjoyed this book. Those weaknesses aside, I thought it was a very good book. So if you are interested in kind of both a thriller, mystery, kind of conspiracy theory, crazed fans, and kind of this simmering family politics of these very wealthy people doing kind of dark deeds behind closed doors, then this will be a very interesting read for you. And if you're not going to be equally as interested in both pieces, then this one might not be worth it for you, simply because of how long it is and how long we wade in kind of both of those, as opposed to it being kind of evenly layered back and forth. You have long stretches of one and long stretches of another. And so just know that going in. Also, there are no trigger warnings, but there is quite a bit of content in here talking about very dubious consent in some cases, as well as straight up CSA and others. We're dealing with also children being kind of stalked, children being almost murdered. And so a lot of these horrible things happen to kids specifically, and then they are kind of brushed off by the rest of the family, as well as in some cases brushed off by the child themselves. So kind of go in there knowing that there is a lot of violence and sexual violence towards children in this book. And so if that's something that you do not want to read about, I completely get that. Maybe this one might not be the book for you, especially when some of the children themselves justify the violence that was done against them and kind of brush it off. That is a major plot point in this story, so go in that with those warnings kind of tucked in your back pocket, just in case, if you're still determining if this is the book for you. But overall, I thought it was a really good book. I am very, very happy that this was the one that I rolled. And so if this sounds like something that'd be interesting to you, I would highly recommend The Skeleton Key by Erin Kelly, especially if you're looking for a book that has been out for a while, or that maybe you haven't heard of. This is one that I never would have picked up. I hadn't heard anything about it. If you're looking for kind of something new to try and you're interested in thrillers and family dramas, then this one might be the book for you, The Skeleton Key by Erin Kelly.